Okay, so let's continue on by learning about single element selectors. So let me just copy everything that we done right here, and I just created a new file 01 DOM introduction. Okay, so let's create another one, and let's call this 02 single element selector. I'm just going to type in here, and let's just type in a single element selectors .js. Okay, but we're not going to write in this, we're just going to write it on app.js. And if we're finished, please copy everything in your single element selectors. So DOM selectors, as the name suggests, are used to select HTML elements within a document using JavaScript. Okay, there are 5 ways to, and all those methods are properties. So all of the methods that we're going to learn by selecting elements are properties of the document object. So in order to use one, we should prefix this element. Now we are going to learn first of all about, so these are single element selectors, and the first is going to be a selected element by its ID. Okay, and this is pretty straightforward. This is get element, actually let me use the document. So document dot get element by ID. Okay, this is it. Let me comment this out, and let's just console log something. Let's console log document dot get element by ID, and let's say we're going to grab onto the DOM definition. So within here, DOM underscore def, and this should, let me check, get element, there should be a dot. What am I doing? Okay, so I'll grab onto the UL DOM definition. If I hover over it, this is grabbing me the DOM definition ID. And don't forget, this is grabbing onto a element and defined by its ID, it will get us the element that has that ID. So in our case, the UL with the ID of DOM definition, and it also has a class of DOM definition items, but we will learn about this later on. Okay, now that we have our ID, we can do specific things to it. So for example, if I would now, let me just copy this. For example, I would get element by ID, so grabbing onto this, and now I want to grab onto its ID, so only to its ID, so dot ID, and now it's getting me down here. Let me comment out this part and hit save. Now I'm getting its ID, DOM definition. Let's see, we can also grab onto the class. So I'm going to copy this, and instead of .id, we can grab onto the class. So class name, and we should have a dot here. Let me close this up. Okay, so now I'm going on to the DOM definition items. Let's just take a look at my HTML. There we have it. So we have our there we have it, DOM definition, and it also has a class of DOM definition items. Okay, so not going on to this, but we're grabbing on to its class. Okay, so let's go back in our app. So we know that we can grab onto things, but can we also do something with them? And yes, we can. Let's say we want to change something. For example, the background color of this. So for this, let me just grab onto this again and delete this. And this time we're not going to console log it, but let me actually assign this to a variable. It's better if you see what I'm doing. So exercise this document dot get element by ID. We're going to grab onto the DOM definition again. Okay, so there's our DOM definition, the UL, which has two LIs within it. So now let's say we want to change its background color. And exactly like in CSS, we would now type in style. So not like in CSS, but we want to change the style of CSS. And if I would want to change something in here, as you can see, I'm also using a style tag. Okay, so this style that we have in here, I didn't create another CSS file. I just used a style tag within our HTML file. So if you want to change the style of an element, you would just grab onto that element, then apply the property of style. So dot style, and now we want to change this background color. So we can change background. And this is perfect because you can see everything that we can change here. So in CSS, it's background dash color, and we have here no dash and a capital C. So this is the way in JavaScript how we can change the background color. And now we have to assign it to something. So equal to, let's say red. Doesn't matter what I type in here. Okay, so we just changed the background color of the entire element, the UL, to red. Now we can use here also hash or RGB. So let me just prove to you. Let's say 333. We get this dark color. And if I would now want to change the color of the text, so let me copy this again. So instead of background color, we will have color, just color. And let's change the color to red again. Not reg, red. Okay, so this would change the color of the text. We could also change its, so let's change document dot get element by ID of DOM definition, and now style. And now I want to change its font size. So we have the background, we have the color, so font size, and we'll assign it, let's say, to RAM. Okay, we can use RAM, we can use pixels. I'm going to change it to, let's say, 10 pixels. Okay, we could use EMs, 10 EMs. Jeez, this is enormous. Never used 10 EMs. As you can see, we could basically do everything within JavaScript, every style change that we normally do with CSS. We could also hide it. So let's say document dot get element. So getting a element from the document which has the ID of, and within quotes, single or double quotes, it doesn't matter, get the ID of DOM definition, which will grab on to the UL. And now we want to change its style, and let's say we want to now display it as none. Okay, so this will get rid of it. It's gone. And we want to display it back, then we will just display it as block. And there we go, we have it again. Now, we could also change the content of the HTML file. So let's say we grab onto the document again, and just going to copy this. And instead of style, we'll have now text content. And now let's say that the entire text should just say a string of Norbert. Okay, and that's it. We got rid of everything, and we just have Norbert. Obviously, if I comment this out, then it's going to go back to its initial side. We don't change the actual HTML file. We just change what the DOM is displaying. So this would change the text content. And now let's say we want to change. So there's another way of doing this. Get element by ID. just for exercises, we're typing this in, and definition. So we're having this. Let's say we want to change the inner text, and let's assign this to Laura. Okay, so this is also a way. Now let's say we want to insert something in it, and for this I'm just going to copy this, and instead of, let's delete this, instead of inner text we now have inner HTML, and within here we can now type in a string, or let's say Norbert, and now I can create an element within it. So let's say UL, and let's open and close it, and within this UL we will have an li. Let's say li, and open and close the li. So we have two li's, and within the first li I'm going to have Laura, and in the second li, no, don't go away, and within the second li I'm going to have Arabella. Okay, so as you can see, I just inserted into our HTML a new file, another new file, but new tags, new elements, and I also inserted text within them. Okay, the next way we can select single elements is using querySelector. So let's type in here, comment querySelector, also a single element selector. Now let's say we want to select something, and until now we used document getElementById, and within here we selected our ID. Let's say we want to use a class, so we can't use, for example, document.getElementClass. Do you see a class? Here it is, but it's elements, so this will select multiple elements. We want to select only one. This is where querySelector gets in to play, querySelector. But this selects elements exactly like in CSS. So if we had in CSS, for example, an IDs, let me select exactly the same ID as here, we would use, obviously between quotations, we would use a hash. Okay, so DOM and definition, we would get the same thing. So let's see what we have here. Now it's selected our new DOM element, which has a Norbert, and it has colors and font size inserted within the DOM, and it has this UL and yeah, two LIs. But I'm kind of tired of doing this, so doing it this way. So let's create a let up here. Let's call it single. So I'm just going to create a variable single element. So don't have to type in here the document blah blah blah. I'm just going to assign this. So this, we're defining a variable with a keyword let. We're calling a single element, and we're assigning it to document querySelector get this ID right here. Okay, so as soon as I'm console logging now, console log single element, let's see what we get. We get our single element right here. Great. Now what can we do with this? Well, basically the same thing that we did with getElementById. So if I would now, let me comment out this console log. So single element and dot style dot background color. Let's change this background color this time to green. Okay, so we're changing. This is basically the same thing as getting element by ID, but with a querySelector. Yeah. But this time using querySelector, and the difference is we can select multiple elements within this querySelector. So because we define this with let, I could redefine it now. Let's say the single element selector is now getting a document. So getting from the document using querySelector a class. And I'm going to use grab onto the class of single element, which is, what is you? Here it is, class single element. Okay, so grabbing onto this class. As you can see, exactly like in CSS, we're using the dot to grab onto the class. So if I would console log single element right now. Okay, so let's see what we get. We get this li with single element. But we are only getting one li. Okay, so this one. And we're not getting all of them. So each one with the class, this will select the very first one. So not because I copied this, but this is really the first element that has the single element selected, the class. And in our entire HTML, you can see we have multiple single element selected. We will select them a bit later on in the course. But this will always select the very first element that it sees. So in our case, the first element which has the class. Okay. Now, as I said, we can also do things to it. Let's say I'll change its. So let's grab on single element and let's change this inner HTML and let's just type in here a string of green. What am I doing? What am I doing? There it is. Green. Okay, so as you can see, I changed this inner HTML and let's change this color also. So single element and let's say color, actually style dot color, not console, color, and let's change it to a white color. What could go with this? Let's also change the background color. So background color, let's change this to red. So we grabbed onto an ID, we grabbed onto a class, and now let's grab onto a tag. So let's reassign the single element is equal to document querySelector, and now let's grab on to a li. Then here li. Okay. So let's, if I console log this single element again, let's see what we got. So what do you think we're going to get? We are going to get right here our very first li. Okay. Well, we could also be more specific. We could say that from the, let me just take a look. Let's say that this has this has an ID, DOM-Selector. Okay, so we're going to go here, DOM-Selector, this UL, and the first one is single elements, and we're going to grab on to this li. Okay, so the way we can do this is going in here, selecting first of all the ID, and then from this ID, wait. Now we need this DOM-Selector. So DOM-Selector and grabbing onto the li. So let's see what we got. We got now this one. You see, we no longer have Laura, we have this one. So we can, as I said, be more specific. We can also use, let's grab onto this. Let's grab onto this ID. And let's grab onto this class, multiple elements. So from the DOM ID, if I select the li, this would give me, let me just save. Just give me null. Why? Oh, because we don't have an li. That's right, because we need, this is not wrapped into anything. I should have done something else. Let me deselect this and put it in here. Okay, so now, yep, as I said, we're getting get from this multiple selector, which is this UL, we're going to get this first li, because it's still selecting the first element that it sees. Okay, so even if I change it to the class, so from the ID multiple selectors, get me now the class of multi-elements. It's still getting me the first one, which has this class. And again, we can do something to it. So single element selector dot style, and let's change its background color to green. Let's go with black. Okay, so there we go. So it's changing exactly so it's not changing the ID's background color, but the class's background color. Go back there. Okay, so this ones. If I would take this out, then it would change the entire ID, and the ID now was for a UL, so it changes the entire unordered list this time. Okay, so this is pretty much it about single element selector. See you in the next one where we have multiple element selectors.